Now 12 Hindu refugees who fled religious persecution in Bangladesh after partition have finally received Indian citizenship in West Bengal, ending decades of legal limbo. These families crossed into India, mainly into West Bengal and the northeast, with little more than the clothes they wore. These refugees came to India during and after the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War, running away from the persecution they faced. Lacking documents from before March 1971, they were treated as illegal immigrants under existing laws, barred from passports, government jobs, and several basic rights. The breakthrough came through the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019 and subsequent rules notified into 2024. In recent months, hundreds of such certificates have been handed over across the nation. Recipients, many now elderly, no longer have to live in fear of eviction or prove their identity with decades-old paperwork. The government describes the move as fulfillment of a long-pending commitment to persecuted Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, Parsi and Christian minorities from Pakistan, Bangladesh and Afghanistan who arrived before 2015. For the refugees, the certificate is more than a document. It is an official recognition that India is, at last, their legal home. And now, of course, I have my guests joining me on the broadcast. I have Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, Bipin Sharma, senior journalist, Madhav Nalapat, editorial director, The Sunday Guardian, and Dr. Martan Jha, contributing editor, NewsX. I'd like to begin by Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist. I'd like your opening comments, please. Gautam, am I audible to you? All right. I'd like to go across to Mr. Madhav Nalapat, who's the editorial director, TSG. Mr. Nalapat, I'd like your opening comments, please.
Very clear. First of all, this post is a public service. There's no question about it. In drawing attention to a tragedy that unfolded and which frankly till now the rest of the international community, barring India, has not even bothered to acknowledge or recognize. In fact, the point was that, and I'm very surprised because it has taken 11 long years of litigation because of opposition from some politicians. Now, some of those politicians belong to a party that went to war to safeguard the rights of the minorities there, that went to war for that purpose. And then for the last 11 years, they've been waging litigation to prevent the giving of citizenship papers to these very minorities. And it's really tragic. I don't see any reason why they have done that. Now, for example, you have another political party behaving in the same manner, placing obstacle after obstacle to legalization of their citizenship. And this party, let me remind you, has allowed, I would say, millions of undocumented people to come. Its party workers are to this day helping these undocumented people who have come with first Aadhaar card, then with their residences, and finally with an Indian passport. Now, the same party is opposing the grant of citizenship to these people. I mean, I don't know, is it because of their religion? I don't know what the reason is, but I find it very strange that a party that allowed the admission of millions into West Bengal is now opposing it. And then you have another political party opposing it. Now, that political party is well known when during its rule, criminal gangs were allowed to operate at will, basically at will. And they used to terrorize ordinary citizens. They used to molest women. They used to, take away babies and children. And they used to extort money. And these were gangs of terrorists. They were roaming all over the state of Bihar. And a party which supported those terrorists, party whose police force at that point in time refused to take action against these terrorists. Now, for 11 long years, they have been fighting against the grant of citizenship to innocent citizens purely because of their religion. It's totally incomprehensible to me how they cannot show the common humanity of allowing these unfortunate people the right of citizenship. It's amazing when all three of them have been guilty, as I pointed out, of so many, so many actions which frankly defy logic. So I'm telling you, first of all, I think whoever done this most. Hello, I'm sorry, that's an election rally. I would like to say.
Yes, Mr. Nalpat, please go on.
Very happy about it. Very happy. Finally, this post shows what public service is all about. I'm very glad that this post was done, and now it is out in the world. And I'm very, very happy. After 11 long years of litigation, the current Modi government and also Home Minister Shah, they worked tirelessly for these 11 years, and now finally citizenship papers are ready, and you're seeing them being granted in their hundreds, and I'm sure soon in their thousands. Thank you, Vaishali.
I'd like to now go across to Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, who's a senior journalist. Mr. Mukherjee, how do you feel about 12 Hindu refugees who've been issued these certificates? Finally, they've received the Indian citizenship. How do you feel about that?
It's high time it was done, and it is, a wonder that it has taken quite so long. And to prevent this, there was active work being done by various political parties, as Mr. Nalapat has just pointed out. And it is absolutely incomprehensible. But I'm glad that this is happening at last. And various refugees from the surrounding countries which persecute them are being acknowledged as Indian citizens. And now that's begun, I assume it will go much faster as the time goes on.
I want to go across now to Mr. Bipin Sharma, who's also a senior journalist. Mr. Bipin Sharma, this of course is a very welcome move. But, initially when it came to the CAA, the Muslims were not included in the list. How do you feel about that point? Mr. Bipin Sharma, am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible. I have heard the question. So, first of all, let me, say with utmost conviction that this signifies the dawn of a new era. It's a newfound hope for countless others in the fray who have been waiting endlessly for the granthood of citizenship. Imagine the hapless plight of all those persons who have been staying as refugees in their own country. So nothing more distressing, nothing more grave an issue than this. Now, there can be always teething problems, certain lacunae in any reform, any initiative which the ruling dispensation introduces. But then to outrightly raise a hue and cry and to sort of go hammers and tongs against it, I think that's not fair. So let's not forget that how Shaheen Bagh became this symbolic epicenter of anti-CAA protests. Now this augurs well. You see why? Because while one school of thought might say that since Bengal elections are in sight, not that far off, so now this can also be one reason that maybe SIR is going to be pitted against CAA. The government also wants to show their report card that because what the government spokespersons were saying time and again, that CA is all about granting citizenship. It is not snatching away your citizenship. So that was what was being projected was completely wrong. So now SIR again, of course, is a filtering mechanism. There can be problems, there can be lacunae in the implementation mechanism. So that, of course, the opposition, the critics, the common man is justified when they raise concerns. But then to sort of go out on the streets and to protest against it, and Modi government, let us not forget that they showed that political will in introducing this reform, when they introduced as a bill and then it finally became an act, it's a law. So that has to be respected, because we must understand the hapless plight of all those who have been persecuted since decades on the basis of their religious identity. So I think it's definitely a very wonderful move. And these citizenship certificates which have been handed over to these 12 Hindu refugees, so augurs well, signifies well for so many others who are now definitely going to sense a newfound hope.
All right, Mr. Madhav Nalapat, now my question really is that, of course, these 12 people have been granted citizenship, but initially now this process took a very long time, because, it was mandatory to provide the proof of their parents' date of birth of that particular country where they originated from. And these are the lacunas that we're talking about in the system, which is why it's taken so many years for this to happen. What do you have to say for that?
Well, I'd like to say quite honestly that getting paperwork out of a country where is not easy. I mean, tempers are flaring up against them. They're on the run, and these people arrive in India with literally nothing, as has correctly been mentioned in the post. But the clothes that they're wearing, that's about it. That's it. They could not take their possessions. They could not take anything. So obviously they could not take these papers either. So I think it's only logical that that condition be dropped, and that irrespective of that, they basically are given citizenship. So I'm happy about that taking place. And secondly, I want to point out, if you're in opposition, it does not mean you oppose everything. I mean, Atal Bihari Vajpayee supported Indira Gandhi in the 71 war. In fact, he called her some flattering terms. I think in some respect they were too flattering. But he basically supported her. And something good is happening, as for example happening in this Citizenship Act, where humanity is being served. It's actually protection of Minorities Act, and the minorities in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh have been terribly harassed. The minority, Buddhists, Christians, Hindus, all three of these religions, Buddhists, Christians and Hindus, have been harassed. So quite frankly, I think opposition for sake of opposition is hardly an apt policy. The opposition should choose some policies to oppose and other policies to support, because if it chooses to support the wrong policies and oppose the right policies, they're going to become unpopular, which frankly they lost 3 elections in a row, and this is not the way to win any election, by basically taking up causes which frankly are not justified by the common tenet of humanity. I'm just stressing once again, what's important is humanity. And if you can't show that humanity to persecuted people who have come in with nothing, absolutely nothing, then to whom can you show it? Is it to friends and family only, your humanity? Or is it to, or are you all the words that you're saying, all the basically all the language that you're using, all that is basically about the people. All that is insincerity, is hypocrisy. And I'm sorry to say, opposition to something as full of human rights as the Citizenship Amendment Act is frankly an affront to the humanity in all of us. And fortunately, the essential humanity of India, the 6,000-year-old tradition, that humanity has expressed itself in this act and expressed itself in the grant of citizenship. 6,000 years of a wonderful civilization, 6,000 unbroken years. Thank you.
Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, now how do you see the inclusion of future prospects and reforms? Because of course the CAA should also include thoughtful amendments to ensure inclusivity and uphold constitutional values. So what are the further reforms that you think should be included?
If you mean inclusion of Muslims, it's a non sequitur. It cannot happen because it's the Muslims who threw all these people out. To then say, oh, there are Muslim sects which are also persecuted by Muslims and should be included, can come a very, very, very long time after you've dealt with every one of the other minorities who have fled and are living in refugee camps in India. As such, the fact that Muslims persecute fellow Muslims is a very big problem in the Islamic world. You've got battles between the Shias and the Sunnis. You've got others in Pakistan persecuting Ahmadiyas. And in fact, all the people who went from India to Pakistan are also persecuted. So it's a problem which is got more than religion. It's sort of politics and interpretations of religion, which I don't think India should involve itself with. It is basically trying to help persecuted minorities, which fit in with our concept of minorities. We have 200 million Muslims of our own and growing. So I don't think we need more Muslims coming in as refugees and being granted citizenship here.
Mr. Bipin Sharma, now a straightforward, direct question to you. How do you feel about the exclusion of Muslims?
No, well, there can be two schools of thoughts. One, as you rightly made a mention of whether, we are looking for Muslim sects, also the inclusion of them. And on the other hand, when we talk about inclusiveness, including everyone, and to sort of actually uphold the ideals of secularism. But then what is the moot point here? That needs to be considered, borne in mind. First of all these three entities are totally different, not interlinked. NRC, NPR, CAA. So that is one thing. As far as the documentation proving your identity is concerned, that is going to be an uphill task for the government. But then as far as inclusion of Muslims is concerned, you see, we have this Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb. We have, we live like brothers. There is bonhomie. So, but then the certain naysayers also need to understand that if certain religious, on the basis of religious identities, some people have been persecuted. So then, is it not justified on the part of the government to sort of grant them citizenship? And if they, and all the more, when they have been living as refugees in their own country, don't they have a right to lead a dignified life? So I think a thought needs to go in that direction. And, and of course, we are a secular country, secular nation. We have, we live like brothers. So, and we have seen enough riots. I think one should not add fuel to the fire. I totally agree with the previous two speakers, very eminent minds. I think they have elaborately made a mention of the fact that now this is the time for new age reforms, and this particular reform and this particular development is signifies new India, the power of new India, that when all the people who have been persecuted on the basis of their religious identities, if they have been granted citizenship, this is the dawn of a new era.
Mr. Madhav Nalupat, he's of course the editorial director of the Sunday Guardian. Mr. Nalupat, now how do you see this moving forward? We've only discussed 12 Hindu refugees at the moment, but how do you see this moving forward, in the future?
Look, I'd like to say very clearly that it will definitely accelerate in speed and definitely accelerate so that those who are persecuted, minorities in these countries, will basically stop being persecuted. India has good relations with Afghanistan, but there I don't believe any Hindu left in Afghanistan. So the problem of persecution and taking it up with the Afghan government does not exist. India, the Pakistan military is anti-India, and yes, it is against its own people as well, but that's a matter for within Pakistan to decide. We had this horrible two-nation theory, but we refused to accept it. And as has correctly been pointed out, we have a very vibrant Muslim community, a very vibrant Christian community. And someday, I mean, like you have an American Pope, you may have a Pope from India. There's no question about it. You have a very vibrant Buddhist community. And so from that point of view, quite frankly, the reality is that this internecine war in a religion is something for the religious leaders of that particular faith to address. It's not a matter for an adjoining country which is acting on the basis of basically persecuting a minority that's been under horrible persecution, that's been under, I mean, the worst possible persecution you can endure. And I'm saddened, very sad, that what we won in 1971, all the gains were given for nothing in 1972. The Shimla Agreement gave Pakistan all the 93,000 POWs that we had got, with all their troops. At least we could have basically, I don't believe Mujibur Rahman was really consulted on that. And secondly, not one of these 93,000 people were held accountable, even though at least the top 50 officers should have been subjected to trials because they perpetrated genocide. And this is the case of the government of India basically allowing people who have committed genocide to just go. And these are the very people who fled there, who their children, and who are now viscerally anti-India. I don't want to take revenge on India. Why? Revenge on India for preventing a genocide perpetrated by them. So the children and grandchildren of these genocidal individuals are now the worst enemies of India in our neighboring state of Pakistan. And of course, in Bangladesh, unfortunately, the groups that basically were anti the liberation of Bangladesh, groups that supported the persecution by the Pakistan army, completely ethnically dominant army, which refused to basically treat the Bengalis on an equal footing. There was a number of people in what became Bangladesh who supported that genocidal military. And unfortunately, these people have recently toppled Sheikh Hasina. Well, I mean, frankly, she had her own problem of corruption and maladjustments and all that. But what has taken place, the replacement is much worse. And as a consequence, I can tell you, Bangladesh is sliding down the ladder of progress and moving up the ladder of a meltdown, as is Pakistan. Thank you.
And on that note, I'd like to thank all my guests for joining me on the broadcast. And that's a wrap on this bulletin. Stay tuned to NewsX for more news and updates.